Can you dig clay straight out of the ground to make pottery? Turns out you can. I have a few pieces in this gallery where I did just that. The clay came straight out of the ground and I processed it and made pottery from it. So today I'm gonna show you those pieces and talk a little bit about how they were made. My name's Cherrico. I'm a potter. This is my jewel gallery, my best pieces, and each one has a story. So let's dive into the story of these 4 cups right here that were made from clay dug straight out of the ground. So I'll start with the certificate of authenticity that comes with these cups. This is handmade paper made by my wife, Sienna. I call it set of 4 golden clay cups, but they're obviously not gold, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. Hump thrown off of a large mound of clay in 2008 when I was still learning pottery. Wild clay, yellow/gold stoneware harvested by my potter friend, Kevin Fritz, wood-fired with my mentor, J.D. Jorgensen. Okay, so Kevin was another potter. We were in class together, and our studio's in Minnesota, but he was from either Kentucky or Indiana. He lives in Indiana now, and he had clay in the ground. There's a lot of clay in the ground all over the United States, all over the world, actually. And so he filled his trunk up with clay on one Christmas break, drove it back to Minnesota, and we pulled it out of his trunk, and mostly Kevin, but I helped with this, he put the clay in buckets and added water. There's a lot of YouTube videos. It's not hard to learn how to process your own clay. What's hard is to make art with it and to have a clay that works for pottery. Well, he put in the buckets, we mixed it up and then poured it through sieves to sieve out all the sticks and the leaves, and then you've got this nice slurry, and it was this golden yellow liquid. Because of the iron oxide in the clay. There's red iron, there's brown iron, there's yellow iron. And then we poured it in plaster, and the plaster dries it out to get a perfect pottery consistency, perfect clay consistency for throwing on a pottery wheel. And I made these cups with it. And we made a whole bunch of pottery with it. I have a couple more pieces in the house. And it's amazing because there's this golden yellow color, and it had this perfect texture, and it stretched really nicely on the pottery wheel. And it was 100% wild clay, straight from the ground. It has these 2 dots on the bottom. So I'm just going to talk a little more about the art now. It has these 2 dots on the bottom because I was probably testing a lot of different clays. Back in college, I went in Minnesota and tried to dig clays out of the ground. I only found some that I could turn into glaze. That's much more common as they melt at a low temperature. It's much more rare to have a high temperature stoneware or porcelain right in the ground. But I tested a whole bunch of different clays. This is the first form that I ever learned to throw when I was learning from my other mentor, Sam Johnson, to throw off of a hump where you have a large mound of clay. You make a little cup, take it off, little cup, take it off, little cup, take it off. And so this is the first form I ever threw. And back when I trimmed pottery, so you can actually see on the inside, there's a little bit of an indent from trimming off of a chuck. Chuck is you put it on your wheel and then you put the pot on top of it and it sits, and then you affix it to the wheel, and while the pot is spinning you can carve and shavings will fly off. Carving across, down, the hips of the pot, call that the hips, and then this inner kind of spiral, and you can even see a little S-crack in there starting to form from, so S-cracking is common, especially when you're learning to make pottery. This little white, whatever that is, it's some impurity. It could be feldspar, it's most likely a rock of some kind, or just an impurity in the clay. Same with the speckling, the black speckling. So why did these turn from like a yellow gold to this deep, dark, maroonish color? It's because the iron oxide, depending on how it's fired, could be a lot of different colors, but it tends to be kind of brownish. And these were fired in a wood-burning kiln. So there's no glaze on here. They turn black a little bit because of the ashes in the kiln, because it's called a natural ash glaze, where when you fire with wood, this jar may have been in the exact same firing, actually. Can you see how it's kind of reddish down here and green on top? When you fire with wood, the ashes from the wood become glaze. They float through the kiln like snowflakes, and they land on the pot, and at 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, where are you going? 2,400 degrees Fahrenheit, they melt into a glossy glaze. And the reddish is from a type of reduction firing where you make the atmosphere really smoky. This one is super red just from where it was in the kiln. And it reduces the clay, reduces the oxygen and changes the color to a deeper, richer kind of orangish red. And the black was, it looks like it's from ashes. I see little individual pieces there. So ashes landed and melted and turned black on the pot. And it's because of the iron in the clay. So it's just amazing to me that you can have a yellowish golden clay that transforms into something like this, like a deep, rich, reddish black. Beautiful. Do you have any more questions about any parts of the pottery process? What else is interesting about these pots? That's when I first started to do the spiral, which I still do to this day on nearly every single one of my pots, except now I don't do it on the outside. I only do it on the inside because I don't trim anymore. These were the first pots I used my signature on. The same year I got it tattooed on my arm, and I've been using that same pottery signature ever since. Beautiful little cups. Learning to do this rim, this edge here, which is unique to pottery, unique to this certain style of pottery. There's a lot of different ways to do a rim. You'll never see a rim like either one of these at like in a mug in your local diner. Let's talk about these marks here. What are these weird marks right here? What's going on there? Well, most likely, this was sitting on a pad of clay and fired like this in the kiln. That's why you can see it's black on top, especially on one face, because this was fired in what's called a cross draft kiln. So in a kiln, in a wood burning, some kilns like an electric kiln, like a conventional oven, it's just elements and it radiates heat. It's just heat, there's not even fire. But in a wood kiln, there's fire moving from one end in the kiln and down and out the chimney. We're talking like 20 feet from fire mouth to chimney. And so the pots have a flame path. And so this was sitting on a piece of wad clay, which is why it has these weird marks, because you have to break the wad clay off and polish it down. And where it turned black, it would otherwise probably be green, like the ashes on this piece, which we'll talk about in a future video. But it was such a light dusting of ash and so reduced in the kiln that they mostly turned black. In fact, you can see little bits of yellow on some areas, which means that there's some thicker deposits of ash, but it was mostly protected. And most of them are black, or maybe, I don't even know, maybe it's different parts of the firing. Early in the firing, it melted with a thinner coating and then reduced, and then later in the firing, some more ash got stirred up and it was not reduced. A lot of crazy things happen in wood kilns that you don't know about. But the placement of the pot in the kiln will affect the color. So this piece was sitting on 3 little pieces of clay, 1, 2, 3 smaller balls of clay on a tripod like this, which is why it tends to be blacker on top and redder towards the bottom. And because it was a cross draft kiln, it looks like one face is blacker because the fire was going this way, hit that side, and so the ash is pounding this side and it's moving this way. So there's more fire on this side, more ash hitting the piece this way, and fire licking the piece. You get color from 2 things, from ash and from fire, flame path. And so where there's flame path on the back, it's a little bit more reddish. So one sitting on its side, one on its foot. This one, let's try to figure out where it was wadded. I don't see any markings at all. I don't see any markings at all of where this one was wadded. Do you? I don't see any. Maybe, oh, I do. There we go. It's really subtle, but it was wadded like this. Can you see how it's just a little bit different color there? It was sitting on a wad ball like that and protected from ash, but opposite from this wad ball, opposite from that is a little bit of this black speckling ash, which means the flame path was depositing it right there. Isn't that interesting? So wood-fired pottery is like that. It's kind of boring when you first look at it. It's just like a brown pot. But once you really understand the process and dive into it, it's just beautiful. It gets really interesting. This one, it looks like, can you find where the wad clay was? I don't see any on the foot. Right there? I think that's it. I think it was sitting again, and Here's more evidence. That little chip right there, it was probably the wad clay sticking to the pot, and when it pulled off, it took a little piece of the clay with it, a little bit of plucking, because things are all melting together in the kiln, and so the wad clay didn't release all the way. So that's further evidence that it was probably sitting like this in the kiln on a ball, sitting on its side, and of course we'll find those black ashes on top. Just a little speckling of it on that side, but not on this side. Cool. Well, I've blabbed enough about pots. Thanks for watching. And if you want to see more pots in the Jewel Gallery, hear more stories about this, I'll be posting continually. CherricoPottery.com/Jewel Gallery. Okay, peace out.